Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Large Format Photography Podcast. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by Andrew Bartram, Eric Matthey and Deborah Parkin. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Simon.
Hello, Eric.
Simon, how are you?
I'm very well. And hello, Deborah.
Hi there.
Great to have you with us on this special episode. It's episode 50, which we've done absolutely nothing special, anything out of the ordinary, but it sounds good. So it's
no, we have Deborah.
Oh, well, that's a very good point. I've really missed a trick there, haven't I? Yes, yeah. So this is episode 50. So we have a very special guest, and we have Deborah Parkin with us, and we'll just edit out everything I've just said before, and this will be seamless again. Right. So. We have a wonderful guest, and Andrew, I think I'm going to head over to the Fens and ask you to introduce our guest.
Certainly, yes. Hello, Deborah.
Hello there.
So, Deborah, you and I have been interacting on Twitter for not that long, really, I don't think, but very struck with your work, and your journey into photography is somewhat interesting. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. I know you were started off with you were going to do your PhD in women's war writing, which in itself is almost a podcast. And then you got sidetracked. You might have been pregnant and fed up, or just pregnant and happy. I don't know. But you got sidetracked. And 18, 19 years later, here you are. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that interesting journey, Deborah?
Okay, you're absolutely right. I was doing attempting to do a PhD in women's war writing. I had done a MA in Holocaust writing at Sheffield, and it was going to be on women's Holocaust writing, and then I sort of progressed and moved into women's war writing, and I was doing a bit of teaching in that area and women's travel writing as well. I had my son, and I thought I'd take a bit of time out. Just carry on with the teaching side. Then I was pregnant with my daughter, and she was 3 months old, and I went back to university to do the war writing, and to be honest with you, I didn't really have it in me. I was just too tired, and just felt myself moving in a different direction. I'll skip back, actually. I was about 8 months pregnant, and there was an adult education evening class in darkroom, and just learning how to use a camera. And I had been trying to learn how to use a camera. This is film camera for years, but I am absolutely dreadful with numbers. So I was sort of struggling, with your f5.6s, and I was, what do you mean it's wide open when it's a small number and all that kind of thing? And I was just useless at that kind of stuff. So, and with film photography, I wasn't very good at writing down every shot that I'd taken, so I didn't know what I'd been doing. And so I went on this, just in the local school, this evening class, and I was enormously fat with baby and everything. And I had to take all my pictures at one level. I couldn't, there's all these people laying on the floor and things, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I just came home buzzing, and then I had Fleur, and I went back to university in September. Fleur was born in June, and something had gone. It's coming back again. I have to say, I'm still very interested in that area, but at that moment in time, I just didn't have it in me. My brain was mush, and I just didn't have that academic side in me. So my husband bought me a digital camera for Christmas when the first SLRs came out. And I did a little adult education course, and started to learn how to use a camera, really. But it was just really sort of baby steps, just to sort of keep me sane, take pictures of my children. And so I gave up my PhD thinking I'd go back to it, but I haven't. And that's that, really.
So how does wanting to take snaps, let's just, I'm not being derogatory when I say that, but taking photos of your kids turn into what, for 10 years was a real focus, of documenting their lives, and not just one project. There's a number. If you go to deborahparkin.com, maybe, your website, folks can see a number of projects around your family, exploring, not just showing them, posing, but exploring different ideas and themes. So how did you get to that from just wanting to take pictures of them and then on large format to boot?
I think if I go back to my teaching, I kept coming across the name Julia Margaret Cameron, and through the women's travel writing, a lot of Victorian writing and things. And my son was probably about a year old, and there was a huge Julia Margaret Cameron exhibition down at the National Portrait Gallery. I used to live in Kent at the time, and I went to that. Absolutely loved it. I am an unapologetic romantic. I just was absorbed in this old world, and I just loved the visuals of it. So those things, I think, are always with me. So I bought the book, and even though I hadn't even had a camera at that point, I liked the history of photography. And I think I genuinely can't tell you pinpoint a time saying, oh, I've decided to do large format photography. I think there's always various things that come in and out of my life. And when I put my mind to something, I'm quite obsessive, I think. And, even, say for my masters, if they gave us an extract that we had to read, I'd have to go and get the book and read the whole book. And I think I'm like that with any work that I do. I need to know everything about it and explore it, even if I'm rubbish at it. I'm just always inquisitive. And I think I love snaps as well. I should say I love family snaps. I think there's a thing, the film Shooting the Past, the Polyakov. There's this thing where he says about when you look at a photo and you look at it and you think they could be like all laughing and that, and you don't know what tragedy might come before or after that photo. And there's always that story. And I think that's even in a snap, let alone a large format or a wet plate or anything. And so I always love the visual storytelling of just these family photographs. And I love looking back at my old family photographs. And so I think, sorry, going back to your point, sorry if I've gone around circles here. I think I love this course that I was on, and I had a great teacher. And it was full of, I say old people. I was probably in my 30s then, and I'm like 50 now, but they were probably 60s, 70s, and they were hilarious, these people. They were all trying to do Photoshop and not knowing what we were doing. It was a bit like me trying to get onto this call today. It was just, I was like, I just had a really great teacher, and he said to me, you should go to university to do photography. Well, I didn't really want to go, in all honesty, but the courses, the adult education, all finished. So I went to university for 1 year, and I only intended to go for a year to learn darkroom. And then we did large format, medium format and things, and I just loved it. And I wanted to take something that was more than just a snap, that just felt like they are everyday photos, but I wanted the children still. And that was the same as wet plate, just to capture because everything's so fast moving. I just wanted those moments to physically feel it was still. And that's, I think that's how I got to it.
Yeah, that was a title of one of your little series of work, wasn't it? Is it called Still or Stillness? Yeah,
Stillness in Time. That's the wet plate work, yeah. And
you're involving your as they were then, youngsters in that whole process.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Most of them, their ideas. I didn't want to be the, Julia Margaret Cameron bossing everybody around and, being, everybody sort of thought, oh no, the old battle axe is here with her camera and all that kind of thing. So I really, anytime they didn't want to be photographed, they were never photographed. I mean, it was an absolute joint thing. And these children were my friend's children as well. And there's one little girl called Lucy, and she had been put off with having a picture taken at school because they had like a feather duster in her face and all that. So every time I would come around, even without a camera, she'd go, "I'm not having my photo taken." And, no, we wouldn't dream of it. So I took my dark tent round to my friend's house in her garden, and the kids were putting costumes on and bringing flowers out and all sorts of things, teddies out. And we were doing all these photos, and then right at the end, Lucy said, "I want my photo taken." She was about 5, I think. So I said, "Oh, great." And then she went and got this really dark cat costume on, sat on a tricycle, and the light was going, so all the UV was going. And I was thinking, this is going to be at least 6 seconds. All the other kids were laying on the floor, so they didn't have to move, and it was much more relaxing. And she was like, "No, this is my photo." And I remember thinking, "Oh no, this isn't going to work." But it did. It actually did. I call it cat on the bike. Just the photo, and it came out really well exposed. That, to me, even now, I look back and think, yeah, that was my success. I was so relieved.
I found it really interesting with the reemergence, particularly of Wet Plate, because it's so slow. Of how well people will hold still. We had Jenny Sampson on, and there's a lot of people taking Wet Plate, and she's taking photographs of skateboarders at skate parks. And I've been there watching her do it, and they're just, 10-second exposures, whatever. And they're literally like managing to hold stock still for so long. And I'm like, how are you doing that? Like, they don't even have the neck brace or anything. It's like, rediscovered. Being photographed by Wet Plate has rediscovered people's ability to sit bone stock still. Yeah. When I would never have given myself maybe like credit for being able to sit that still. But it's interesting, when we talk about stillness and snapshots, Wet Plate photography was the snapshot of its age back then. That was considered a snapshot. And it's really interesting to me how now, a snapshot is like
well, it
take
was
out
the
phone and do something really quick.
It was an occasion event, wasn't it? I've mentioned this video before. I think it's probably on Amazon, and it's about a small town photographer in the States. I don't know if you've seen it, Deborah. And it's called Defarmer. Strange, but his surname was Defarmer, Defarmer. And he was a small town photographer, and folks would come in, quite poor families from farming communities on market day on Saturdays, and for, I don't know, a nickel, a quarter, I don't know, American people are going to be shouting at me, this is the 1800s, and they'd have a family photograph taken. But this guy, everybody was terrified of him, and the video is brilliant, and he'd have them up against this wall, and it's just a plain wall. Sometimes there was like things coming up behind them out of their heads, all very unphotogenic, really. And they were you could see them, they're just petrified, standing there, and the woman was being interviewed, and she said, "Well, I remember going in there, and I must have been, it wasn't the 1800s, it was the 20th century, but early on, because otherwise this woman wouldn't remember which she was in her 70s or 80s. So, I don't know when it was, 1930s, 40s. And she said, we were just terrified of him, but it was an event. It was the snapshot of the day,
Yeah, the children weren't terrified, I can promise you that.
I was going to ask, so it's like however many, 10 some odd years on, have any of those kids picked up photography or gotten that spark or taken anything from that?
Yeah, well, my son, he's did some wet plate photography last year. He's doing an A-level photography, which is finished. And two of my friends' children, they've gone down the arts route, and they have to do photography, and both have asked if they could come and learn wet plate specifically, which was supposed to have happened last summer. And actually, I hadn't done it for a few years, so I was like really thinking, oh, am I going to be able to remember what to do? But once you start getting the chemistry out,
it's like being a black cat on a bike. You never forget how to ride
it. So anyway, it was one in particular really would like to learn how to do some large format and wet plate photography. I think my son, he's had enough actually at the moment, because he's done an A-level, he's done 2 years of photography. and he wants to be a graphic designer. So I think he won't do it for a little while, but he might come back to it. But I genuinely think it was going back to that instant photography again. They saw, the good thing about a wet plate is that when you pour the water on and it sort of pops up, they could see the magic of them coming through on this plate. And the plates are beautiful as well, aren't they? So, they could see that. And I think it was just all quite novel for them, really. Mm-hmm. And we had pizza and all that on the go as well. So.
And there was pizza.
And cake.
Deborah, I think one of the things that would strike the viewer of your website and who follow you on Twitter is, your preoccupation with memory, with photography, and the idea of memory and time passing. I did pinch a couple of quotes that you wrote, so you'll have to try and cast your mind back from your wonderful blog, I have to say, and you've been very open, and it's a wonderfully written blog. And you were commenting on, and one of your series of images is about memory, and about memory, and you're quoting Freud. Now, I think this is the first for the large format photography podcast. I don't think we've had any Freud on. Freud said this, apparently, the foggy remembrance of a sensation that can no longer be grasped. This is childhood, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was about childhood. I missed that bit out. The foggy remembrance of a sensation that can no longer be grasped, but still affects our emotions in ways we cannot explain ourselves. And I think you said in your memory thing, you were if there's this gap, then how do you capture that in a photograph? This idea of childhood from where we are today. When you were making those photographs when you're in your 30s or early 40s, how do we capture those memories if this gap exists? So, and then I've written there, discuss. So there you go.
Oh my goodness.
Do you remember writing that?
I remember being obsessed with memory. Gosh, I do remember sort of writing that. Yeah,
memories of childhood drawn. Yes, that's to do with your image, your series on memory. Yeah, I was just refreshing my.
Yeah, I know where this would have come from when I did my MA in Holocaust. We did a lot of diaries and memoirs, and it was about how do you trust your memory, and what feels real to me might be different. We might have the same experience, but we might remember it differently. And when I was doing my memory series, that started, as I said, that I went to university for a year or so, and we had to do like a staged photography. So it wasn't any of these pictures, but this is where it sort of came from. It's like I decided to go back through my own childhood memories, but recreate them with my children. And it sounds like I had a really dreadful childhood, but I didn't. But it was just it was interesting. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. And I set up some pictures where my children might just be playing, and then I placed my own interpretation of what I felt that childhood. So they could, for example, take the one of the playground. My daughter was playing hopscotch in a museum and happy, just doing. I have totally different experience of school, which I really hated, and I had lots of trauma with things like this, and so I made it dark. I imposed my own view. I cut off her. You could just see her legs, so you couldn't speak to her, you couldn't see her, kind of thing. You just see her body, and then the expanse of the playground. And that's my interpretation. That's my feelings of what it was like to be at school. Hers was completely different. So there's it's a picture of her, but it's also a picture of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. This is about as close as I think it was probably Alfred Stieglitz, it was certainly very fashionable around the 1920s or 30s. He coined this idea of equivalence. And it's a photograph that you can, I mean, it could be of clouds, but it's deliberately designed to evoke an emotion. And I'm staring at these pictures from memories, and these are, I'm looking at them and I'm feeling anxious for the child. There's one, those hopscotch ones you've done 3, and they're all kind of sort of, I'm feeling lonely and a bit frightened and a bit apprehensive. And then there's one which, boy, it's so powerful. Your daughter is just hunched up in a room with a discarded panda by a radiator,
Yeah.
And that's a really traumatic picture. Goodness me, these are powerful. And I'd commend anyone to go and look at these images.
The thing with something like that is obviously you sort of don't want to give too much away, because you want people to put their own feelings and thoughts into these things. But those weren't large format. They were all taken on medium format.
Okay.
So I'm just sort of taking snapshots, actually. My daughter was actually, the sun was in her eyes, so she's holding like she was doing that, and she had chucked the panda to one side. It was actually a relatively innocent picture, but that, for me, when I saw that image on the negative, that for me felt like the feelings I used to have, because my mum and dad were divorced, and I absolutely hated the fact that my dad wasn't living with us, and I would either be very insular or very hysterical. And those sort of feelings, I think that's me as a child. That was me when my dad used to leave on a Sunday afternoon. And but that was the point of the project at the time. That was what we had to do at university. So that was part of the project, that particular image.
You talk very openly on your blog about your parents and their struggle with alcoholism, and your dad in his last days in Ireland, when you went to see him and you didn't recognize him, and he was like a completely different person. And I can relate to that. My aunt, when I last saw her, I didn't recognize her. In fact, I thought I'd been taken into a room with the wrong person. I said, this isn't my aunt,
Yeah.
And so. How, you said you had you didn't have a traumatic childhood, but having parents who went through that, how has that affected your own interactions with your family, and how has that come through in the photographs you make of them? And I can't help going back to memories again, because it's your own childhood, and you say it wasn't an unhappy one, but that must have had some bearing on it. And does it still impact your image making today?
Yes, it does. It wasn't, I think the early years were unhappy. My mum definitely did her best. My dad was an alcoholic, never acknowledged that he was an alcoholic. I don't think I acknowledged until I saw him dying that he was an alcoholic. And when I gave birth to my son, I actually said these words, "It stops here," because there was a history. It's not just in my immediate family. It went back. There was always something going backwards in my family, that there was, whether it's my granddad was an illegitimate son to a 15-year-old girl in 1920. There was always something that would... that was heartbreaking, I think. And I said, it stops here. And I've always put my children first. That's it. They are front and center of my life. I'm still me. I still have my own identity and all the rest of it. But I just knew it had to stop there. So I think we're very close. We're really, the 4 of us, my husband and my 2 children, we're really good friends. My son's about to move away to university, and heartbroken, but really excited for him. I mean, genuinely mean that as well. But, I don't think being a mum, it'll ever stop, that you'll worry and all those kind of things. And I think were so many different things that went on in my childhood. Too many, to sort of discuss here. But I think that it doesn't stop you worrying, and it just cannot. I just don't think I can be looking through that camera without that. That's so much a part of who I am that we can't. I can't escape it. I don't think when I'm taking photos of my children, I just don't think I can escape it. But that doesn't mean to say I'm sitting there depressed, even if some of my pictures do look a little bit depressing.
Well, I mean, the memory series of folks, you've just got to look at those. I don't find them at all depressing. I find them emotional, inspiring. I question them, so it's really lovely to hear you just put in some explanation.
Were they like in the online gallery? Were they put in a particular order? Out of curiosity, because I don't know if there's a progression in terms of the ordering in the gallery, or if they're to be viewed in a particular order. Because there's the very last image in this series, at least on the websites presented, is your daughter with these beautiful wings looking out a window, and it's much, for me at least, it's much less of a dark, and I'll air quote the dark images, right? But it's much less of a foreboding image. It's a really beautiful, like she's in this halo of light, like out the window, and the wings are all lit up. It's a gorgeous image. And I was wondering if that's in a particular series and that's a lighter ending to them, or if it's just random. I was really curious about that.
Honestly, it's both. It is both, because I have put them in an order that I felt was right.
Okay.
But I don't think I've overanalyzed why I've done it. Maybe this is where Freud will slip in. I don't know. But it's like I genuinely think I think I'm over what went on, anything to do with the past. And that, I mean, my dad died 4 years ago now, and I have a very sort of cut and dry. Enough, and that's enough. And actually, I think sort of having children and photographing sort of helped me put all that to bed. Really, I don't feel worried by it. I actually think it wasn't really a bad thing, to explore it. I'm pleased I did it, actually.
Did that background though color, because if I look at your academic background, in essentially writing an exploration of traumatic events in this Holocaust and women's war writing, maybe not necessarily yours per se, at least as far as the degrees go, but still academically examining, parsing through and writing about traumatic events, and then coming into photography and sort of exploring photographically and with your children that same thing. Does that all sort of like feed into your path to where you are? And then I guess my follow-up question to that is, as I look at a few other photographers and also writers, Gaz Dooley, right, over there in England, he started his own nonprofit around documenting the effects of war on people. And then Sarah Sentiel's and her incredible book, I can't recommend it enough, called Draw Your Weapons, which is, if you haven't read it, is just, it's mind-blowing exploration on the trauma of war and how people experience it and work through it with art and doing things with their hands afterwards, and how we view war and trauma through the art and the things that they make. It's brilliant. So I don't know, going forward, are you planning on like still working in that? Will you now that your kids going off to university, will you re-engage maybe? Because we have a really interesting world now with refugees and war, and a lot of places where one could take a camera and that sort of background and exploration and writing and do some interesting things, literally in our own backyards, right?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where I'm going next. I'm thinking about it a lot, and I definitely think people always think I'm a bit strange that I chose to do an MA in Holocaust studies, and I think for me, when I did that, it gave me this huge sense of perspective of my own life, and that it sort of helped me deal with anything that we had had a friend that was murdered, and we had a man that was living with us that murdered his girlfriend. It was all these really strange things happening in our lives that I do actually really remember, or I think I do at least. And I think that this doing something so massive like the Holocaust actually gave me a sense of perspective, and it didn't depress me. I found it fascinating, and it made me want to sort of, I don't know, be a better person. Oh, that sounds really cliche, doesn't it? I don't know why I did it. I can't really explain why I did it. And I think photography, I don't know about what I would photograph. I don't know. I am slightly more uncomfortable with photography and war, Holocaust, and then I am writing. I can't understand. I'm not sure why. And it's necessary. I'm not against it. Please don't think that. But I mean, for me, on a personal level, maybe it's too immediate. I don't know. Maybe too voyeuristic. I don't know. I really don't want to. I've got to be careful. I don't want to open a debate about this because I don't actually know. But so for me, I think I'd be very interested in studying war photographers, particularly women war photographers. I'd really like to go down that road. But I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's very hard to get into the academic where I am at the moment. So, but that would definitely be something. Not me actually photographing. I don't think I could go and physically photograph this area, but I think I could study and write about it.
Right. Well, it's interesting. One of our guests, Wayne Martin Belger, he photographed portraits, in Lesbos and all sorts of stuff, talked to refugees, and he said what one of the Syrian refugees said to him was, and I'm paraphrasing, but I just trust two things. I just trust cameras, and I just trust people with cameras and people with guns, because they both come, they both take away, and they both leave nothing good behind. They both give nothing back. Right. And so he would attempt to just engage as much as he could and give back as much as he could to overcome that. But you're right. Like a lot of photography is, I feel, fairly voyeuristic, and it doesn't necessarily give much back to the people that it takes images of, right?
Yeah, and I would have to. I know that I couldn't just take a photo, just take. Right. I feel that I would have to be part of them somehow. I don't know. It's the way I am. I can't. As much as I love snapshots, as I said, I actually feel that I couldn't just go and take something from them and walk away from it. I know I couldn't. It's just not in me to do that.
Right.
We've chatted about terminology before and on the show, Deborah, and I was reading some I forget who it was, and forgive me if you listen to this show, you probably don't, but somebody put a tweet out, and it was an American lady, I'm sure it was, and she said, isn't it about time we changed some of the terminology we use, in this day and age when, kids are being shot dead by trigger hungry, trigger happy. Yeah. But we use phrase like shooting and locked and loaded and even taking, and we use it all the time. I mean, it is a bit of a pet thing of mine, but I use the phrase taking a picture, and it's very, very one way. And if with your particular fully immersed, style where you're working with your kids or other families, and you're fully engaged, and now you've got your teenage sons and daughter, and you're been teaching them how to make wet plate. They're fully immersed in it. That's not taking, is it? That's giving.
I hope so. Yeah. I do hope so.
Yeah, and I would say, 2 points. One is, like, photojournalists for the longest time, and I didn't really catch this use of the phrase until, like, here in America, like lots of school shootings. Like, he's a shooter for Associated Press. He's a shooter for Time. I'm gonna go shoot. Right? It's only until recently, especially because it's becoming a father, where I'm just like, oh yeah, well, he's a shooter. I'm like, oh God, that sounds god awful. Like, like there's terms that we've used in society at large, slave, master slave, even in technology. It's really common where it's like, that's suddenly has become enlightened. I can put air quotes. I'm sure there's some of our readers who are just like, listeners who are just like, oh God, you PC snowflakes. But still, like, you have to think about these things. Right. I mean, you have to. It's sorry, folks. It's called empathy, but that empathy makes for great photographs. So back to Andrew's point. Simon hasn't said a word. It's very weird. But back to Andrew's point, and also your point about taking images that are in which you actually are immersed in not the scene, but in the lives of the people, right? You photograph. I think wet plate and large format really, not to like blow our own whistle, but really helps with that, because it is like this big camera and people have to interact with it. I like to have people look through the back of the ground glass and I stand where they stand so they can sort of see what this is going to possibly look like. And it forces you to slow down a bit, right?
It does. And I used to be a really self-conscious photographer. So, say if I had an SLR, for example, and you were in a public space, I could not bring myself to take a photo.
Same.
And when I got the large format, you'd think that would be the worst thing you could do, but we'd go down to say like the rock pool on the beach, and we'd sort of clamber over, and we'd be on the beach. And once my head was under that blanket, I didn't think of a thing. I was just invisible. That's how it felt. So I didn't really have a problem with doing large format photography with the public watching me and thinking, what the hell is she doing? But I think it's because I was hidden.
It's like being behind a giant wall, like, you can't see me.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because people portrait photographers talk about using twin lens reflexes because they enjoy that eye contact, where you can look up and look down, whereas when you've got an SLR, you're putting this barrier up. But actually, a large format is potentially even bigger barrier. I suppose you've got that time when you're setting it up and people are wandering past, where it's not such a barrier.
No.
So if you want to do street photography, use large format photography.
You become much less the object to be looked at than the camera when you roll a large format.
That's true. Yeah, so it's less about you, isn't it, and the attention. Whereas you're snapping away with a smaller camera, and then it's more about you. Yeah. Where it's perhaps more about the process.
But at the same time, the large format enforces a lot of interaction. You have to interact with people with the large format.
Yes, yeah. What you're doing. You could be using like my camera's probably 20 years old or something. You could be using a modern camera like Simon has his Chroma camera, which was made last year. And Simon will set that up and they'll say, a guy will walk past with his kid and said, look, that guy's using an old camera, a Victorian camera or something. and I hear them and I says, no, it's modern. Come and have a look, come and engage and talk. And it is actually a really good way to engage with people.
Yeah.
Deborah, do you think you've channeled your parents' genes into photography? They might have been addicted to something quite destructive, but maybe your addiction is towards this passion of creativity and photography.
Do you mean have I passed this on to my children during that?
Well, I don't know. They talked about people can have like addictive personalities, don't they? I mean, I it rang a bell with me because I'm on that slope as well. I became immersed in photography when I was 15, and it's been all consuming pretty much ever since. And it could have been something much more harmful.
Yeah, I think it's been books and then the photography. And like I said, when I go for something, I really go for something. Mm. But which is good because I'm an incredibly restless person, and I'm always searching for something, and I'm always thinking about where it would be good to move to, and that, which luckily I've got a husband who's really stable. So he keeps me grounded. But yeah, I think that I am quite flighty, and so I think, I don't think I would have been an alcoholic like my dad. But you never know, do you?
No, you don't.
No, I think. I mean, I came out of school with absolutely no qualifications. I zero. I didn't get one O level, and I was such a rebel. And I sort of did all my education as an adult, like at night school and things. And and now, I mean, I'm like I said, I turned 50 last year, and I'm obsessed with education. I'm obsessed with learning, and whereas at school you couldn't get me to sit at a desk. So I suppose it could have gone the other way. Do I've never thought that it could have done. I just always assumed that I'd be all right.
Yeah, well, you come on the large format photography podcast and you expected these incisive questions. So Deborah, your children have been your constant focus for years. And in your blog, you say you stepped back from photography for a while because you found it overwhelming. And then you worked on a farm, and I think you got involved in horses. And 2 years later, you did your horses. And then I think you had, when your father passed, and then you did jackdaw. So would you like to just talk a little bit about that period of time and your step away from it and how it helped you or not?
Yes. I just found social media a bit overwhelming, and I started questioning why I was photographing, and this kind of, I didn't want it all to be about likes and networking and things. So I started. My daughter started horse riding up a local farm, and I went up there. And I used to have horses as a child, and I was really happy when I was with animals and with my horses. And so I went up to the farm and started helping out because they'd been left in the lurch. And so it was really thrown in the deep end. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was wild. It was, it wasn't a proper like equestrian. I mean, it's a great riding school, but it was, I think the horses lived in the wildness as near as you could get to a wild horse. They live out on the fells. There's sort of masses of fields. It's wild and windy over there, and it was just like I could breathe again rather than just looking at the screen to see how many likes you might have or something. And it was, I just fell in love with the horses, the freedom, getting away from the computer, getting away from social media. And I worked with the horses for a couple of years, and I just bought myself a little digital camera and when started photographing the horses, but I wanted to get their trust in the same way that I did with the children. And I, took really close-up photos of them largely. And, be laying on the floor and and really hoping nothing would spook them. And, but they'd got to know me. So it was really, really nice. And it was a project that took me years to do before I even got the camera there, and sort of reignited my love for photography again, I think.
So that was digital, but you didn't consider wet plate then for the horses?
I don't think they would have appreciated the camera. I don't think they would have stood still for me, would they?
So did that lead on to directly onto the jackdaw? Your beautiful cyanotype work with the jackdaws, I think it was probably influenced. So what's the deal with jackdaws, and how did that body of work come about?
We moved out onto the Pennines. So we were living like in a small town, but we've moved out quite remotely onto the North Pennines. So it's all full of moors and, savage nature. And my dad had just died, and I did grieve in a way because it was a shocking death, but I held it all together, and I just used to watch. We've got a barn, and it's full of jackdaws, and I used to just watch the jackdaws, and they just reminded me of my mad Irish family, and I just constantly watched them. I just got really fascinated by them, and I think that was part of my own grieving process. I can't really explain it. And again, I'd stopped photographing, and my son said, he bought me this cyanotype book, as I mentioned before. I said, come on, Mum, you need to sort yourself out and get back into it again. And children make you feel brilliantly guilty, can't they? So I looked at cyanotype and I'd never done, I don't think I'd done cyanotypes, not really done cyanotypes before. And the only thing that's here to photograph, the children are always at school or at their clubs or friends or whatever. And the only thing to photograph here was the jackdaws. And so because I always have to photograph what I know, I just started photographing them. And I thought, I'll try them as a cyanotype because I've got this book now. And so I started doing cyanotypes, and it was brilliant. I just loved making work again. And it was quite simple, really simple work, but it was there on my doorstep in my life. So when I was completely on my own, and I mean you are on your own here, it was just the jackdaws keeping me company. But they're not like the city jackdaws. If you see they see your shadow, they're off. They are very feral compared to, if you walk to sort of the shops in Hexham near where I live, they'll be walking at the side of you, but they're not like that here.
Did you ever, because that entire family of birds is highly intelligent, they recognize faces, they can do puzzles, like they actually use them for psychology experiments a lot, like, okay, how long will it take the crow to figure out these series of puzzles? So were there any particular jackdaws that seemed to start to like the horses have a relationship with you, or see you and become less scared, or are they always just like, oh no, we're out of here?
No, they have never warmed to me. They really, I think we are near Grousemoor, and I think they've probably been shot at by farmers and gamekeepers. They do not trust humans at all. So they look, if I'm in the barn, they generally fly away. They don't trust humans at all. And actually, I think I needed that detachment at that time. I genuinely think I needed, everything else has been so personal and so much emotional investment. I don't think I had that in me at the time, because I was grieving for my dad. And I think that was just something to do. And I think that there was a slight detachment, although again became a bit of an obsession of mine, trying to photograph them all the time.
Is that a reflection then of, to a certain extent, like the relationship with your father, where you're trying to capture something that you may not be able to really get, that you'd actually manage to get in other work? Like you get intimacy and you've been able to like get involvement, but with the jackdaws like, oh, no. And coming directly after your father's passing, was that sort of maybe some sort of reflection of something unknowable about your father, or is he working through something like that?
I think when your father's an alcoholic, you always wonder, gosh, did they love that addiction more than you? And yeah. I think, and can't keep helping saying, yes, obviously he did. I know it's not that straightforward, but he chose to drink instead of choosing us, his daughters. And when we saw him, he'd been here to stay with me, and we went back to Ireland, and the family phone said he was in hospital for dermatitis. And I thought, oh no, I knew he had cirrhosis of the liver, and I knew he was drinking again. And we went over to Mullingar, where he was in hospital, and he was unrecognisable. He was just, he'd lost about 8 stone. He'd lost his teeth. His hair was white. It was just within about 6 months, unrecognisable. And we thought we were going in to see somebody ill, but he actually died in front of us that day, screaming, actually. And it was just horrific. And I think the thing with the jackdaws for me was, I think I was angry as well as grief. I think it was, and I think for the jackdaws, just staring at them and feeling nothing was quite nice. And I'm possibly reading too much into it, but they were a huge part of that process. And the actual making of the cyanotype was the nice bit, I think, the kind of escaping and not thinking, and just thinking about the photography, the process, and that. So I'm making pretty pictures.
Right. With a beautiful old process, right?
Well, and that's fine, isn't it? You know, you've got a series of work on your website called Flowers, I think, and I don't think there's a great hidden meaning behind them, other than they're just lovely pictures of, I think, mainly your kids with flowers.
Yeah, and that's
okay, isn't it?
That was my point, because you see a lot, don't you, of like always the meanings behind photos. And Wet Plate was having this huge discussion about if you're going to use the process, it had to have a reason for doing so. Yeah. So I thought, sod it, I'm doing flowers. So I'm quite contrary.
I've been listening to, my darkroom's out of order and my photographic mojo has lulled, mainly because I can't print anything and I've been a bit fed up with it all. I've been watching a few YouTube videos and this is completely different genre to yours, but Stephen Shaw, the topographic, did stuff on uncommon places and American surfaces. He's got some fantastic lectures online and they're really instructive. And he said something, he got onto the subject of whether words should accompany images, and of course everyone's got different views on this, but he said a photograph, and I'm paraphrasing, a photograph can't explain anything. It can maybe point at some ideas, but it can't explain anything. It can get you to question, it can get you to respond emotionally. But you could be in a war zone and you see some graffiti on the wall and you could take a picture of it. Unless you know the context and the history and you're immersed in it, it doesn't really explain anything. And so some words maybe to go with things are, if you really want to put a message across, but you don't have to, images don't have to be about anything. They can be lovely, which your flower portraits are.
Thank you.
I don't really know where I was going with that quote from Stephen Shaw, but I thought it was quite interesting.
Well, we live in, I think the four of us can agree, like right now we live in a very image rich age, right? Like we have I'm going to use British terminology. We use phones to take snaps. I love the term snap, by the way. It's brilliant. I'm trying to integrate my vernacular with my wonderful co-hosts. But we see just so much imagery all the time, and the vast majority of it is just pretty little photos. Like anybody can take a really pretty sunset, and I think I'm going to air quote this for the audience. Serious photographers feel this pressure to not take just pretty pictures because everybody takes pretty pictures, but it's a good way to practice. It's a good way to just have like a release. It's a good way to just see something and take an image and not worry about it.
There's very little new, under the world of photography. So, Stephen Shaw, to go back to him, he's actually now focused on Instagram. He does most of his work. He's obsessed by Instagram, and the immediacy of it. I know. The other quote he said, Deborah, was linking words with images as well, which I just find it a fascinating topic. He said, in the same way that we use grammar to put words together and build a picture, so we use form and structure in a photograph to help to convey meaning. So how about that? Does that ring a bell with you?
I think so. It's funny, it sounds like I think a lot about what my work is about, and I actually don't.
No, me neither,
I don't.
No.
I think a lot of it comes sort of after. I'm quite a feeling, because that sounds so
intuitive.
Intuitive, yeah. And what's around me, I don't go sort of looking, and I do. When it came to the flower portraits, it generally was me being a little bit awkward, thinking I just want to make some pretty pictures because I'm told we shouldn't be. So that was just me being a bit contrary and having some fun, actually, just me and the kids having fun with it. And also I started off doing flowers when I first learned Wet Plate because they don't move. So my children.
Well, they do. They move around in the wind.
Yeah, well, not when you're in a room like laying down, but
Okay.
yeah, you know what I mean. It's like it was a practical thing, so it's there was no sort of depth, no deep meaning to these photos, other than just having some fun and enjoying myself.
Yeah, so even taking flowers, you can be people can be looking at them and reading everything into them. John Blakemore, who I don't know if you're familiar with John's work.
I do know John's work, yeah.
Yeah, I did a workshop with John a couple of years ago in Nottingham, and he was showing some of his tulip prints, and he became obsessed with tulip. And the obsession with tulips is a real thing, or it was a massive thing in the, I'm going to say 1800s, tulip mania or something like that. And so he was sitting at his kitchen table one day, and he saw the light just catching these tulips as they were starting to wilt, and he thought, that's just a lovely image.
Yeah.
Now, afterwards, he started thinking, well, actually, is that a commentary on impermanence, on things that are ephemeral, decay? And then from that sort of triggered something in his mind. And he did then go on to produce all these, you perhaps have seen them, these beautiful works of flowers, tulips. And then he went on to do like Victorian stage dioramas with all these flower scenes. And he became obsessed with tulips as he is a little bit now. So, yeah, but the idea came afterwards, I think.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean, you look at things, don't you, all the time. You see that, at the moment there's gorgeous light across the chest of drawers and things. And if there was a flower there, I'd want to take a photo of it. But I'm only looking at the light, actually, or the flowers in that light at that moment. And I think that's okay. Absolutely. I think I don't have a problem. I think people should photograph what they want. If it makes them happy, and obviously nobody's being harmed, but you know what I mean? Like, just, I think I don't have, if you want to take sunsets and that's your thing, that's absolutely fine. I just think there's so much going out in the world that's nasty and horrible that you should be more concerned about than what people want to point their camera at. Within reason, again. But I genuinely, if I felt like going out and taking a picture of a sunset, I would. I don't do that. But that's probably because I've got children and I've probably had to go and pick them up or something. It doesn't fit into my life. It's not really because I am making a judgment call on it. So
you as you were heavily involved in those sort of 10 years of photographing your kids, and I imagine it became in those long summer holidays, that's where it really, took off. And then you got that dreaded September, and you did a body of work called something about how you hate Septembers. I forget what it's called.
September is the cruelest month.
September is the cruelest month, which is, you think, well, that's just a beautiful title, and I know what you mean, because our kids are grown up now, but when they were here, we weren't photographing them with a wet plate camera, but you're immersed with them, whether it's whatever it is, and then suddenly they're gone, aren't they? For the day, and you've got all those days. So you had those days suddenly to fill, and then it's worse. They go off to university, but now they're coming back, and are you going to pick up that project again with them?
Yes, definitely. I've still got some instant film, so I've actually got quite a lot that I really should get used as much as anything else.
What have you got? Sorry, I'm a big instant fan, but I've never shot it in 4x5. So
I should have written this down. I'm not good with numbers.
Have you got the Fuji stuff or the old? Have you got the old Polaroid positive neg type 55?
No, it's Fuji FP
100s. Oh, in 4x5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's all 4x5. Yeah.
You could sell it and go and live in the Bahamas.
I know.
Yeah, you can buy a gold-plated car for that.
I know. I haven't got the heart. I need it. I really want to finish.
Well, you need to use it. Don't hoard it, because once those pods will eventually dry up. Yeah,
they're all in my salad bit of my fridge.
Yeah. Well, that's what else is a salad drawer for?
Definitely not for salad.
But no, I will. I've definitely this summer. I mean, I have actually. If you look, there's a series called Home on my website, and that's been taken over my children as teenagers.
Right.
a lot of the films deteriorated. So it's not as, I don't think it looks as good as the older stuff that I did. And obviously the children, possibly slightly more self-conscious than when they were really little. But I called it home because we've moved out here in like I say, onto this moor, and I'm totally rootless. I just never really found home, but it's their home. And so I just wanted to photograph them in this home before they go off to university. And so that's what I'm definitely will be doing this summer. And even if it was me not wanting to, they actually want the series to continue.
Wonderful.
Because I have actually done it over a few years. So, and I actually do have a lot of other, like the instant film that's not on the website, that's just in photo albums and that at home. So I have actually photographed, there might be one or two each year that I've got to photograph them so that you can see them getting older and older.
You know, you don't, I think you know this now, you don't have to be sharing everything on social media. You don't have to be chasing those likes, do you?
No, absolutely not. Well, I'm not on Facebook anymore.
No, don't blame you. Well, I tell you, there's a wonderful Facebook group called the Large Format Photography Facebook group, which is a really lovely place to be. But you do have to rejoin Facebook. But you can ignore everything else about Facebook and just be involved in one or two groups. But I don't want to, twist your arm into that, going down that route.
I think I've still got my Facebook photography page actually on there, but I can't access it because I closed down my account. So I think I can get it through my husband's account, but I've just never.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. You've the lightening things up a little bit. You've shared some wonderful images of books and things recently, and I'm a sucker for. As soon as someone shares something that they said is interesting, go and buying it now. My purchasing habits have dried up a bit in the last year because I'm pretty much not earning any money now. But some good books that you'd recommend, particularly on women photographers, because that's been a massive issue, of late, isn't it? And bringing women artists into the fore. And I know you shared some recently, but I can't remember what they were. So,
oh my goodness!
Sorry to catch you on the spot.
I should have written these down, shouldn't I?
Oh. Well, that's okay. If you send me a link later, we could have just talked about them. But if you can't remember, that's fine. I can share them in the show notes.
Yeah, come back to me on that because I'm terrible if I'm sort of told sort of on the spot kind of thing. But yeah, come back to me on that one if that's okay.
Although that does lead to the question that is oft talked about in our Facebook group and in some other areas in terms of how would you recommend, like, as a community, we get more women into photography, but also specifically more women into large format photography? Because this seems to be I'm going to, again, air quote this for our listeners, a decent representation in the photographic industry as photographers, photo finishers, and whatnot, at least in the digital commercial realm, but much less so in large format specifically. And so, like, how would you recommend that we as a community start to reach out and get more women photographers involved in the format?
Well, that's really hard. You
can't just make them all easy.
No, I'll tell you why it's hard. It's because it's like you always feel sort of, you don't want to speak for all women, do you? Just because I'm a woman, it doesn't mean to say I can speak for women, but I'll have to say it from a personal point of view, and not speaking for other women. I sometimes do get a little bit put off with technical. I just sort of close off. I'm not saying all women will do that. I like talking about history of photography. I like talking about women's role in photography. Processes, yes, and that, but I'm not really into kind of what size lens and things. I'm not saying it's not relevant and important, and I'm genuinely not saying that you shouldn't be talking about these things if that's what interests you. But if you were trying to get me involved into the group, I would say I'd be really interested in looking at the sort of visual side of photography and what large format can do and produce, as opposed to the technical side. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I know you were treading carefully because you don't want to go down that route of saying, well, it's technical, therefore it's for the boys, because it's absolutely not. When I last looked at the figures for the large format photography Facebook group, we were something like 95% male. Now I manage another Facebook group called the Lensless Podcast, which is all about pinhole photography, and there it's nearly 40% women. And I don't know what the answer is really. And a lot of the women are making cameras, and making their own pinholes. But there is very little gear talk, even from the men and the women. It's much more end result focused,
Yeah, and as I said, I definitely wasn't trying to say that was for the men and that was for the women.
I know.
I think everybody has different. I can only speak for myself, and I like the sort of more the end result. I went into. I bought a large format camera because I like the pictures. I like that I could bend and I can blur and and all those kind of things. But that doesn't mean to say that another woman's gonna find that interesting. I just don't think it's gendered. I genuinely don't know why there seems to be more men than women. I have no answer for that, I'm afraid, because I don't think it is surely it's not a gendered thing.
No, well, I wouldn't like to think so. It's just that it's the way it appears to be in our little world. But then it begs the question: well, what are we talking about with another pet topic of mine with the photographic community? Just because we've got this little bubble in our little Facebook group with 1,400 people, but that's not represented. You're not on Facebook, So we engage through Twitter, but there'll be lots of people out there. Lots of women out there, I'm convinced of it, doing all sorts of things with large format, with all sorts of alternative processes, and we don't, unless they choose to engage on social media and sup with the devil. And they say, well, when you sup with the devil, use a long spoon. We wouldn't hear them, would we?
Or in this case, a long lens.
Well, when you sup with the devil, use a long lens.
Yeah, and I'm just more wondering how, in terms of, because this has been a topic of ours internally and externally, like how do we bring in more people to the table? Because we are, large format photography isn't the devil. I mean, the devil is in the details of large format photography, as we all know, per se. I can run with that analogy forever, but like, how do we get more people at the table? Because I think, like bringing Nicole Small and other folks, and we've had a lot of great conversations, and I think our definition of large format photography has broadened so much by bringing more people in out of the bubble.
I've never really thought about whether it's men or women doing large format photography. I've never really thought that more men do it. It's just people.
And you may well be right. As I'm very much looking at it from the perspective of our little large format photography podcast group, Facebook group.
I think it's great that you are. Because it's such a great way to photograph, and I think more people did it. I suppose it's quite expensive way to photograph, isn't it? That's
can be.
It can be. I mean, I got into it cheaply per se. X-ray film, RC paper negatives, like you can do it really cheaply.
Yeah, not instant film then.
No. You've chosen quite the road to hoe, I must say.
That's the laziness in me.
You mentioned Julia Margaret Cameron as being a major influence on the style and image and direction you took. Any others? Women of history. You said it's an interest and passion of yours.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Put you on the spot again, haven't I?
You have. Do you know, I actually wrote this down earlier, but I can't find it. I thought I was being super organised. Yes, I do. I like, these are, I would say they've been, I wouldn't say necessarily been influences, because I like Francesca Woodman, for example.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't do self-portraits. So in that sense, I wouldn't say she's an influence, but she's definitely an inspiration. I like Emmett Gowan. I like his family photography. Going back to women, sorry. Lady Haywarden was another one that came up with Julia Margaret Cameron, Victoria.
Sorry, I'm making notes. Lady who?
Clementina, I think her first name is Haywarden. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. I can spell it.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, yeah. I'll find it on Google later.
Yeah. And then you've got sort of people like, have you heard of Inga Kraus? He did these sort of Russian portrait of like children in like Borstal and things, or orphanages, and
probably have seen the image. Sometimes you see the images, don't you? And things, but you don't know who it is. Okay.
Really striking black and white portraits.
Okay.
Quite emotionally engaging, I think. So, but nothing like I do.
No.
But something I would love to be able to do. I just think his work is really engaging.
But why they're inspirational, I don't know all of them, but I certainly know Francesca Woodman's work pretty well, and I've seen her exhibition in Liverpool a few years ago when she was paired with that painter, Sheil, something like that. You know who I mean?
Yeah, I do. I went to it.
You went to it as well, did you?
Yeah, I went to it down at the Tate. Yeah.
Wasn't it good?
It was amazing. Yeah,
and I think it was one of the best put together. You know, the way it was structured.
Yeah,
exhibitions I've seen.
Absolutely brilliant. So I took. We went as a family for the day, and the kids were sort of, they knew her work anyway because I've got the books. But they really liked her. And then we went up to Edinburgh to see her work as well, and it was with Deanne Arbus and Mapplethorpe. Yeah. And it was quite funny. My son, go and see Mapplethorpe with a teenage boy.
Well, he's an interesting. He was
slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah. Mum, why have you taken me to see this?
Yeah. Wait, the name of this piece is what?
He moves along quite quickly. I also like again, I never know how to pronounce Claude Cahun. She did lots of self-portraits.
Whoa, say that again slowly.
It's her sort of like a pseudonym, Claude, and then Cahun, I think, is Cahun.
Okay.
Right. And Marcel Moore, it was her, and they've got a really interesting backstory. They're quite surreal, and again, nothing like I do. But these are the sort of women, and there's Margaret DeLange who did her children as well. She had a lovely book out called Daughters. So yeah, there's a variety. I've got a mass, and of course I do like Sally Mann. I mean, I have to say that I do like Sally Mann, but I wouldn't. Despite what everybody says, so Sally Mann, she isn't actually my go-to. I think she's great, wonderful, amazing. But there are so many others out there.
Eric's trying to get her on the show.
I haven't even started. I don't even really know where to start with Sally Mann. I do not have.
He's on probation because when you listen to the Alice Tomlinson show, of course Eric wasn't there. He's a new boy, so he's on probation till he manages to land Sally Mann. You see.
Right. Wait! I thought it was David Burnett.
Well, and him, yeah.
No, one of the. Damn it!
No, both of them. I think what they've all got in common, I would imagine, is their passion and their love of. Well, maybe not the medium, but the message that the medium brings. What did you think? What did you think of Diane Arbus's life and work? Because I've read her biography, and certainly was a fascinating person. But there's troubled soul, a bit like Francesca Woodman, I suppose, who must have been equally troubled. Because they both died far too young, didn't they?
Yeah, I love her work. It's provocative, and it's thought-provoking. I don't know it enough to make a proper judgment, I don't think. I'm sure there's lots of question marks of both, ethics and things like that. I don't really know where I stand on things like that.
No, me neither. No, it's easy to make judgments, though, isn't it? You could say, it's exploitative, you could say. You could say. I'm not saying it.
I'm always wary about shouting out an opinion. Unless I really know, I would have to go away and really read, and then I'd come back with an opinion. Just looking at the images, it's great visually for me to go, God, that's striking, that heartbreaking or whatever. But but I haven't sort of dug deep into.
Go away and dig deep about it before you shout about it on Twitter. That's probably what we're saying.
That's usually what I try to do, and I'd still want to shout about it on Twitter.
Are you familiar with Nan Golding's work?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, that's in that same sort of genre, isn't it? You know, that can be equally disturbing and in your face, but very powerful at the same time.
She was part of that, though, wasn't she? That she lived that, and I think sort of
she photographed her life, didn't she? As she was living it, you know.
It feels like there's permission. Yeah, there's like a permission. It's her life and everything, and I think that makes it really powerful. No, I think she's amazing, actually.
I've run out of questions, really. Well, I mean, there's many more things, I suppose, but they're the ones I'm prepared for. But that's a fantastic diversion about women photographers. I'm going to go and research them, and it'll probably lead to far more book buying than I can really afford.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's better than buying yet more camera lenses, which is what we all tend to.
Well, that's Simon just buys camera lenses and cameras.
Really?
Don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I have been. Yeah, I have been a little. Sorry. I've been quiet almost the whole of the show, and I can't speak. I've been very quiet this week, largely because I think myself about something that Shane Belkovich said of me once when he goes, "Well, you're just a gearhead, Simon," and I've slightly felt like a gearhead this week. I've got to say, but that's not to say that I've not enjoyed listening to you, Deborah, because I absolutely have, and it's a case of when I've got two co-hosts that are far better at asking the right questions to a guest such as yourself. It's just a pleasure to be able to sit back and listen to the three of you, and it's been my pleasure. And actually, just on the subject of a previous guest, which I think that we should mention, and if you've not seen her work or seen the podcast or listened to the podcast we did with her, and that's Kate Miller Wilson, who. And if you check her out on Instagram, I think you'll love. That's Kate Miller Wilson.
She is knocking it out of the park.
Lovely, brilliant. I always love recommendations.
And go back and listen to the podcast as well, because she was a lovely guest.
Okay, I will do.
Yeah. Another lovely guest.
Another, yes, we've had so many, and so I think that's a good time to. Start to wind things down a little bit, and let's do a little bit of housekeeping. And first of all, since we were last on 2 weeks ago, we have received a donation, which yes. So I wish to thank Larry. I think it's Hoon. That's Huhn. So I'm going to go with Hoon. And
we live for Sam's pronunciations of names, for the record.
Yes. And he says, "Thanks for the great shows." Well, thank you very much, Larry. And on that subject of donations, we have now finally gone out and bought a sound recorder. I'm actually talking through it at the moment because it's got a nice microphone on it. So we have now bought a voice recorder, which is going to allow at least two of the hosts of the podcast to go around Britain and meeting people in their studios and their workplaces and things like that. I mean, we've been threatening to do several, such as Dave Shrimpton, Peter Defty. You know, there was I don't know if he still wants us, but he left us an invitation before COVID. So that could be a trip up to Bradford way, certainly South Yorkshire, I think.
Yep, I think
that kind of area.
Yeah, that's right.
And
lifeboat stations.
Honestly, I'd want to go to Deborah's farm. I want to the scenes out of your back area and the jackdaws.
Deborah Parkin, we could come and I could park my caravan. You sound like you've got loads of space for my caravan. Come park my caravan in your back drive.
You can do. It's not a farm. I should add that though. I've probably made it sound a bit more than it is. No, it's a garden.
That's okay. I'll park in your garden.
But yes, you're welcome. You'd be more than welcome.
So,
We've got 10 nights. 10 nights in Northumberland in July. So we're.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
Sorry, Simon. I've diverted Deborah. Near Dunstanburgh Castle.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm hoping to bump into our dear friend who was very much early on in the show, Graham Vevais. If you don't know Graham's work, Graham, but he's Barnard Castle sort of area, and
that's not far from me.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic. He's a brewer. When in good times, he's a brewer, and he makes work. He makes work for a local gallery. He does some. He's making a Super 8 folk horror movie at the moment, or he's trying to in between COVID.
So you're going for the.
Yeah, so look up Graham Vevais. When you go on Twitter, find him. He's Grey Head or something. His name is Graham Vevais, Vasey. He'll be my shout out for the week.
Oh, right. Well, some of my photos are on the Northumberland coast. A lot of them are, actually.
I might come to you for some tips. Looking forward to it, just to get away from the village. So we're going on the road, Simon. Anyway, that's the plan.
Yeah, we are, and we've also invited ourselves down to see Guy Bellingham as well, haven't we?
Yep, we did.
Yeah, whether he wants us or not, we're gonna head down that way. And that has been made possible by those people that have donated to the show over the past 2 years, because that's pretty much how long we've been going. Because 50 shows. Yeah, in fact, it is about 2. Yeah, we're over 2 years old now, aren't we?
I've no idea.
I don't know. Whatever. It's 50 shows. I mean, yes, they're well done to us. Let's do shout outs. Now, Andrew's already done his, unless he's got any more.
No. Not offhand.
Well, let's head over to California and Eric. Have you got any shout outs, Eric?
Yeah, well, I would definitely say shout out to my good friend Vince Donovan for letting me once again wedge my way into his photo studio / darkroom yesterday to test the latest lens build. It's always fun to get into his studio and hang out with Vince, even underneath. It's more fun without face masks and the ability to drink whiskey or beer while doing so, which we're unable to do this time, but I look forward to doing it soon. But I don't own an 8x10 camera, so building a lens for an 8x10 camera and being unable to test it is a bit of a conundrum. So thank you, Vince, for letting me test my wonky lens on your wonderful camera. And of course to Heather for putting up with my shenanigans. That would be my fiance, my long-suffering fiance.
Well, I'm going to do a quick shout out to Eric Matty's Instagram feed, carrying on from what you've just been talking about there, Eric, because there was a video on there in between bunny videos of you developing or your friend developing, and I thought it was a wet plate photograph, but it turns out it wasn't a wet plate photograph. Now this could be a whole podcast in itself, so
it could be. We could have Vince on.
Let's have the short answer.
Yeah, that's RC paper. That's just standard Ilford RC paper that Vince gives it to reverse positive. He's done it for. He does it with X-ray film. I think he's managed to do it with dry plates. All sorts of black and white film. He's figured out how to reverse process everything. He's done it for Sheila E. for her birthday. Vince used to run the first and the only wet plate photography portrait studio in San Francisco called Picture Booth. And he got it down to a science, like 30-minute wet plate portrait sessions. So he's like the master at that sort of stuff well before it became sort of, a bit more like it was like 10ish years ago, Deborah. So like before wet plate was really like much more popular than, it's much more popular now. So Vince has all sorts of mad science and studio portrait stuff just like down. It's like sitting at the feet of a master and he just like dabbles. And you're like, oh, what did you just do? So yeah, people are crying out for his recipe. And I'm harassing him a little bit to try to get it because it is really cool.
That's great. So Eric is my shout out. So Deborah, have you got any shout outs for us?
Gosh, no.
It's the hardest question of the lot. It always is. Yeah, we can talk about Freud and stuff, but coming up with the shout out, that's far tougher.
No, I'll have a thing.
What about someone you referenced recently in a tweet was Rose Teenby?
Oh, yeah, she's lovely and she's so fascinating. She's doing PhD on women, early women photographers.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
yeah, I think she's discovering quite a lot, actually.
We did meet her briefly, Simon. Do you remember?
Oh, was that the photography show?
Yeah, she was on the stand with Rachel Brewster Wright.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
Rachel Brewster Wright. If you don't know Rachel, you need to look her up as well. Little Vintage Photography. So she at the photography stand at the last photography show you could go to, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Rachel and Rose had a Cyanotype Workshop stand as part of the sort of analog showcase side of things at the show, and they had a copy of that book of early plant picture cyanotype stuff, and then she was talking about the history of it, and Rachel was doing the demonstrations.
She's so knowledgeable. Yeah. I'm really passionate about what she's doing as well, which I was like.
That's your shout out, Rose Teenby. I'll put a link to her work in the show.
Well done, Deborah.
You're welcome. Not that I've been stalking you on Twitter or anything.
So Deborah, outside of this podcast, where can people see the wonderful things that you do, whether that be in physical places or online?
I have a website, deborahparkin.com, and I do post on Twitter. I'm not great with Instagram. I am trying to be better with Instagram. And physically, at the moment, nowhere. Actually, Fox Talbot have got some of my work. You went to their archives. But I haven't exhibited for ages.
You had a show with some others at the Fox Talbot Museum in 2013, arrangements in black and white.
I did.
Arrangements in black and grey in the 21st century.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience, actually. I don't always like exhibiting, but that was just so professional and just wonderful, a really wonderful experience and opportunity. So they've got some of my work there.
Is that Oxfordshire? Is that where that is?
Wiltshire.
Wiltshire. Is that near Laycock Abbey? Is that the same place?
Yeah, it's exactly the same place. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really good. I really enjoyed that. So, but I did a big batch of exhibitions. I actually like being in exhibitions with others, like the Fox Talbot. I really enjoy that aspect rather than doing solo exhibitions and things.
Yeah.
Just on the subject of DeborahParkin.com, I think you might be better off with DeborahParkin.co.uk. DeborahParkin.com doesn't work very well from
it is .co.uk. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
good bit of self-promotion there, Deborah. You've got some books for sale as well. I think some of them are sold out, but there's one or two on there. They're
not for sale anymore. They are all gone.
Are they all gone? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they are all gone. Yeah, the publisher. I mean, yeah, that's finished. I've been promising to make my own books and do all that kind of thing, but I just haven't got around to doing anything like that. I've been on bookbinding courses and everything over the years.
Yeah.
And one day I hope to get my act together.
We look forward to it.
Well, okay. So, Andrew, outside of the show, where can people keep up with you?
Twitter mainly. That's my most active vice, I would say. So I'm at Warboys Snapper most days on Twitter, and then also in the Facebook group, the Large Format Photography. The Large Format Photography? Anyway, Large Format Photography Facebook podcast Facebook group, whatever. I'm not sure it's got a the in it or not. I know the email address hasn't got a the in it, but I can't now remember whether the Facebook group has.
Well, what is our email address? Go on, go for it.
Large Format Photography podcast at gmail.com.
That's it. Well done. Well done. And you also do another podcast as well, don't you?
I do, yeah. Well, we haven't done one in a while. We took a break just before Easter, the Lensless podcast, and we've got about 6 guests lined up, but the guests are so rubbish at getting their act together that we actually haven't managed to do it. my co-host said, "Oh, well, we can do one this Sunday." I said, "No, we can't, because Sundays are now, every other Sunday is turned into the large format show photography podcast." So the Lensless podcast will be back in due course. But we're up to 105 shows or something. I don't know with that. All about pinhole photography. Deborah, do you do any pinhole photography? Because today is Sunday. If you're listening you won't be listening on Sunday because we won't be putting it out today. Today is World Pinhole Photography Day.
Yeah,
it's always the last Sunday in April.
Yeah,
and we celebrate all things pinhole. Deborah.
Yeah, I don't. I have tried it, and I do have a pinhole camera, but no, I don't.
A pinhole camera on your large format camera. Wonderful results.
Yeah,
It's fun.
Yeah.
So you can find me lurking around that Facebook group as well.
Right. You're not going to persuade Deborah to go down that route at the moment.
No, you don't sound very keen. I just thought a creative lady like you, all that lovely creative work. Pinhole is so, you're capturing big chunks of time. Think of all the projects you can work with Pinhole.
Oh,
Deborah likes a lens.
Visually, I think that you get something really beautiful, and I love the work of Mark Tweedy. But it's. I'm quite rubbish with photography in a lot of ways, actually. So I'll stick to. I want instant gratification.
Don't we all?
Yeah. And fair.
and Eric. So how can people keep up with you and the things that you're up to?
Pretty much just Instagram, honestly. I don't really keep my website updated. So it's Eric, ErikHmathy is my Instagram handle. And I'm occasionally popping into the large format photography podcast group on Facebook, but mostly for images and whatnot, just Instagram. The grams, as the kids say.
Cool. And myself, I'm on Twitter as Simon4. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic, which is also the name of my website. If you stick .uk on there, that's at simonforsterphotographic.co.uk, where you can buy lots of lens caps. And more lens caps I'm making for lots of different cameras, and I've finally produced a lens board, a 3D printed lens board that I'm happy with, which I will start selling things, whether that be for MPP micropresses or speed graphics or Cynars, Toyo views. I said Toyo, didn't I? Toyo is the correct way of saying that.
We're not going back to that argument over definition. No, we know it's Toyo.
It's definitely Toyo. That was how it was. Yeah,
not Toyo.
Very, very specific. Toyo.
Bullocks.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's pretty much me, and I think that's the podcast. Deborah, it's been brilliant having you with us. Thank you for being with us, Deborah.
Oh, thanks ever so much for having me. I was a little bit nervous, but you made me very welcome. Thank you.
No, you've been great. You've been absolutely great. So, on that note, I hope you've enjoyed it, and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye.
That was poor. Now go on, Andrew. You say goodbye, and then have a break, and then Eric can say goodbye, and then Derek can say goodbye. So
Derek Parkin.
So Andrew, goodbye.
Goodbye, Simon. Goodbye, listeners.
Eric.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. And goodbye, Simon.
Deborah.
I love it. Don't outtake this one. Keep it.
No, that's it. Right. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.